told me to confide into the outside that he was worried because he thought, wow, is this really me giving this talk and are there really people waiting for it? So I just want to ask, who here was excited to see Ben 10 talking about this topic?
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, all right. Thanks, Dad. All right. So a little bit about me. I am Ben 10. It's not Oxa. It's a 0, so it's not Ben Oxa. I'm from Chicago, but I'm actually relocating to Dallas on Monday. Yep. Yeah, sorry, I know. I work at a company called VioPoint, which is an MSSP up in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Go MySec. That was one of you, good. Too far of a drive, I guess. Developer, PowerShell framework creator. Some of you guys might know some of it about that project. But I did bring my son with me. But unfortunately, in discussing things, my son looks at me and he says, Ruben Paul's going to be there, so I'm ditching you and going to Ruben's. So on the count of 3, we're all going to yell, thanks, Ruben. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks, Ruben! Jeez. Totally stole my... Jeez. So, yeah, my little guy is here. I brought him just to show you that there are people that are shorter than me. So they do exist, and everyone that's walked around, they're still giving me crap about my height, though. And they look at him, and they're like, so did you bring your son with you? And he's like, you know what? I'm 3/4 my dad's height. I'm going to be taller than him. All right, so I did do a contest like I do every year, so I'm going to burn through this kind of quick. We're a little bit behind schedule, and I want to be fair to the next speaker. But I did a contest this year, as I've done every year. It's kind of becoming an annual event, where I give away a free ticket to DerbyCon. And the whole idea that, typically it's something with Photoshop with me. And so this year I tried to do something a little bit different. Those that may not know, I help out with the B-Sides Joint Task Force Capture the Flag events that we were doing in Chicago, Michigan, Circle City Con in Indiana a couple of years ago. And I'm big into steganography, love it. So this year I kind of tied that into the contest. So you had to solve the stego, and then if you got the right code, you were able to enter the contest. So this is the winning entry. Loves to run, trains to run, still won't survive because I'm a red shirt. So we thought that was the best one. That was done by Chris. Can you guys give Chris a big round of applause? Chris, where are you? Is he in here? The bastard. I gave him a free ticket. He doesn't even show up to my talk. He's next door? Jeez. Here's the next one. I was a little disturbed by this one. Why Ben will unfortunately not live through the zombie apocalypse? Free hugs. Catch me if you can. On a kid's body. Thank you. DerbyCon, Running Man. Another Running Man. Running Man was pretty popular. Screw the force. PowerShell, baby. I'm going for a run. What's the worst that could happen? I didn't make it. The worst part about running a 5K is losing to a guy who is clearly not prepared for it. Run, bitch. There's booze at the end of this race. This is the first time I've ever been photoshopped on a woman's body, and I say I look great. So this is from Mubix. Ben 10 zombies don't chase him when he runs, mystery solved. So Mubix, are you in here? Oh, good, because this guy is messed up in the head. So he does this CTF thing, and the whole premise was to actually create a running meme. And so one of the first ones he sends me is this. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, how about a running one? So he sends me this. And I'm like, no, seriously, a running one. So there was that. And then the final one was an animated GIF of me running, chasing a child, no less, with an ice cream cone. So that was fun. So I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So Gray Hat PowerShell. We're going to talk about how to use PowerShell for good things and evil things as well. But here's my disclaimer. It's lorem ipsum. No, seriously. You guys, I'm not saying that you guys go back to your enterprise environments, pop administrator on your domain controller and mess around with some of this stuff. A lot of the stuff I didn't write, and some of it can destroy things. If you want a cool tool to mess around with somebody, use manifestations set critical process. And what this will do is it'll take PowerShell and make it a critical process. You leave the PowerShell running, so someone comes back to their desk and they just type exit or hit the X, and it blue screens. It's amazing. Just don't do it on your domain controller. All right, so this talk is not an intro to PowerShell. Okay, I did that last year. How many of you guys were at my talk last year about intro to PowerShell? Okay, so that's not this talk. We're not doing intro. We're going to be very fast, very quick. There's no way I can do all of that in one. If you do want to see that talk, it's up on Iron Geek, and it's a slide share and available, so you guys can go back and watch that. Okay, so you can grab that there. Okay, so quick overview. We are going to dive into .NET. We're going to look at some of the offensive tools, some of the defensive tools. We'll look at some resources, do Q&A, and I'm all open for hugs, okay? But before we go any further, okay. So I have limited edition where's Carlos? Carlos Perez. He gave us some limited edition PowerShell challenge coins. Okay? There's not very many of these things. So Carlos has donated these to my talk. If you ask me a non-inane question, something related to what we're talking about, and it's awesome, you'll get a challenge coin, okay? And then I have 3 drink tokens to tonight's party for free drinks, okay? So you guys can choose one or the other. When they're all gone, they're out there. All right? Okay. So let's look underneath the .NET hood. PowerShell actually sits on .NET. Okay? So one of the things that most people don't realize is, it was developed by Microsoft. This sexy guy right here. This is one of the sexiest. This is my background image. This is nothing better than greeting you than Bill. But it is, it's a Microsoft product. It's not a Linux thing. It's not Python, whatever the case may be. And it took a long time to actually pick up speed and momentum. And now there's 6 PowerShell talks here this year. So it's super awesome and great to see a lot of the stuff that's going on with that. But before you actually begin to create any tool, whether you're offense or defense, you actually need to understand what you're doing. There's a lot of wrong ways to actually develop and write a tool. You can make a tool that's great, but if you don't understand what's going on in the background, then you're not going to be an effective attacker, and you're certainly not going to be an effective defender. So this is something that most people are surprised about. PowerShell is not PowerShell.exe. PowerShell.exe is not PowerShell. It's just a host application. The whole idea here is that you can actually do PowerShell without PowerShell.exe. Where PowerShell lives is system.management.automation.dll. That is where the magic happens. That's where there's butterflies, ponies, and Dave Kennedy. Seriously, that's where it happens. So let me kind of show you a little bit what's happening with this. Can you guys see my mouse? Good. All right. So this is what you would see in PowerShell.exe. Then you have the host application. So that's PowerShell.exe. This is what's happening all in the background. You have a run space, you have pipeline, you can have multiple pipelines. Then you have your commandlets, scripts, functions, output. All of this can be managed, manipulated, and messed around with without PowerShell.exe. So let me show you a little bit about that. So let's pull this up. So I'm going to put PS, I'm going to say PowerShell, create. Okay. So what I've done is I've actually created a separate instance of PowerShell. So if you look here, the type of my variable is actually PowerShell. So I can actually go now, add command, get date. All right. So now if yay, it worked. It's the same as this. But the difference is that it's in a separate run space. It's in a separate pipeline. So, that's well and fine, but let me show you something else. Let me go ahead and close PowerShell. Let me make sure PowerShell isn't running. Ignore the process that says zombie porn. Okay, so any PowerShell running? Yes or no? No. Okay, so let's go ahead and over here. So this is my awesomer shell. So this is awesomer than PowerShell. So what I've done is I've hooked into the system.management automation. I have set up, I've done PowerShell.create, as I just showed you guys just a moment ago. I'm adding the script command, whatever you type into this command. And no, I'm not doing input sanitization. No one's ever going to mess around with my stuff. Then I go ahead and invoke it and then pull the items back out. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what that does. All right, but before I do it, I'm going to grab my process. I'm going to type over here. This is set to always on top so you guys can see if PowerShell ever pops up. If you guys see PowerShell pop up, I'll give you a drink token. Okay? So I'm going to say get date, out string. PowerShell pop up? Nope, but that's a PowerShell command. So the whole idea here is that you can actually build your own run space, your own pipeline, put all of those commands in, and it's all in memory. So if you think from a defender side, if you think you're just going to whitelist or blacklist PowerShell.exe and then you're going to win, you're wrong. Okay? That's not how you solve this problem. Blocking PowerShell.exe doesn't solve it. I could use awesomer shell. Okay? Because it's awesomer. So you have to rethink your defensive strategies when you're looking at this, because anyone can do this. And I did put this code on my GitHub, so if you guys want to see it, just copy and paste and mess around with it, you guys can go ahead and do that. So there's a little example there. So let's go back. All right, so I put these into my deck, the screenshots of what I was doing, just so that way when you download this slide later, you can remember what we did. So did your head explode? Because mine certainly did. So the first time that I thought about this when I was writing this out, I'm like, wow, I can do everything in PowerShell without PowerShell.exe. Woo, yay, this was great. And then I was like, now how can I break this? So there is another thing, I just went through that. So there's the awesomer shell. So now I wanted to figure out how I can mess around with it. So I met, these great people called Matt Graber, Chris Grammold, who developed PowerSploit. Matt Graber is right there. I would say the guy in the plaid, but there's like 6 of them right in a row. So, he's the good-looking one next to Carlos. But Matt and Chris created PowerSploit, great tool. How many of you guys have used PowerShell? Awesome stuff. Okay, so, but there's also this thing called Empire. You know what, dude? I'm tired of it. You know what, security, come up. Let's just, you've been doing this the entire time. Security, let's go. Let's go. Can you guys give it up for Will Harmjoy? Thanks, guys. Thanks. Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? My first short joke! Jeez, that only took 35 years. All right, so I was going to demo some of the cool tools that they had. Will, at B-Sides Las Vegas, released PowerShell Empire. One of the coolest things I've seen come out of PowerShell in a long time. And he did not submit to DerbyCon because, why? Yeah, excuse fail, okay? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to actually turn the mic over to him because I want him to show you what he's doing. So can you guys give it up to Will for a second? So Kali is there. Okay. Yep, so there's Kali there, and then there's your Windows 2012 is there. Yeah. It's just, the password's just Tor.
Super secure. Cool.
It really is.
So I'll try to go kind of quick, again, because we had a bit of a late start. So PowerShell Empire is a fully functional fully functional PowerShell post-exploitation agent. So me and a few other people started to notice that there's a lot of these awesome offensive tools through things like PoshSecMod and PowerSploit that have a lot of the functionality of a rat that you would normally want. You have your keyloggers, screenshots, Mimikatz, token manipulation, and everything. But there wasn't a fully weaponized kind of framework that lets you run these and get the output effectively and efficiently in a crypto secure manner. I'm putting that in quotes because if anyone watches the Git logs, there was a really bad bug in the controller that got fixed. So if you're actually running Empire in the field, you should definitely update. So yeah, writing secure code is apparently very hard. Who would have thought? Okay.
So the people in the back can see it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so real quick, it has the it has the concept of persistent listeners. It uses a SQLite backend. So whenever the control server comes down and comes back up, all your listeners will be started back up. Then we have these concepts of launchers. So we have BATs, macros, like little one-liners and things like this. Kind of the shortcut is this little launcher, whatever the listener name is, and it'll give you this big encoded command. So actually I already ran this on this 2012 box. What this will do is it starts kind of a little souped up download cradle that does some key exchange in the back end and actually starts running this agent core completely in memory. So again, none of this is touching disk, just kind of by nature, so you have a fully functional kind of running
Wait,
agent.
you're not using PowerShell.exe for this?
No, well, by default, we're using PowerShell to launch, but we actually have kind of an adaptive version of what Ben talked about that lets us do process injection. It uses a reflective DLL in the back end from managed to unmanaged code space and actually loads up the run spaces and everything. So we already triggered it, so I'll just kind of, for time, everything clear. Okay, so we have this kind of agent session ID as it comes back, and you have all the functionality you would normally expect in a RAT. You have your process listing, your upload, download, all those kind of things. So I don't know if people can kind of see that. You have
ignore the zombieporn.exe.
Yeah, zombieporn.exe. So real quick, there's way too much functionality to go over in 5 minutes. There's a large number of these post-exploitation modules that kind of wrap up a lot of the functionality through PowerSploit and other things. So if we want to do something like use module, credentials, Mimikatz, logon passwords, and it's a kind of a full metadata container, kind of similar to a Metasploit post module. When you execute this, it'll actually task the PowerShell in the back end of the control server to be picked up by the agent asynchronously as it comes back in. It'll run it, execute everything fully in memory, post the results back, so it's a get post style kind of setup. It'll start a background job, and hopefully, if there's not a demo fail, apparently there is a demo fail. There we go. Cool, we get all our standard Mimikatz kind of output coming back, and it actually has a internal credential store, so everything will be parsed out, and you can reuse all the creds and everything.
Those are my passwords.
Yeah, ShowMeCon 2015. So
oh,
sure. Cool, but I think it's a cool project that really builds on top of a lot of the stuff that people in the offensive PowerShell community are doing. And if anyone's interested, I'd be more than happy to. I'll be in the hallway after, and we can kind of talk about some stuff as well.
Will, I'm good. So before we go any further, thanks, Will, very much. Will's doing a lot of cool stuff with that stuff. We've covered some PowerSploit stuff earlier and previously in other talks and stuff like that. And so Matt and his project has done great, but I really wanted to highlight what Will was doing because it's something a little bit beyond what you guys typically see. So before you go and grab these tools, I want you to be aware of something. So all of these are being signatured. So a lot of the tools that Matt and his team are creating, a lot of the tools that Will and his team are creating, there are now signatures for the PS1 files. So now there's obviously obfuscation, bypass techniques, and whatever the case may be. But if you think that you're going to be, as an attacker, you're going to go and grab Invoke Mimikatz and write it to disk on the box you're attacking, if they have AV, chances are it's actually going to get flagged. And I know Windows Defender does it, Symantec does it. I haven't seen it. I don't have any of the other suites, but I know that those two both have been flagging it. In fact, they just wrote a new signature on Monday for another one of Matt's tools. So this is where the next process really comes into play, which is Invoke Expression. And so what the whole idea here is that with Invoke Expression, by the way, Lee Holmes is in here. So Lee, thank you so much for Invoke Expression on the download strings. So thank you. Thank you so much. So Invoke Expression, new web client, download string, and then just put the right to the PS1 file, and that'll actually bypass it because as it stands right now, the AV is not doing scans in memory. So don't write it to disk. Okay, if you want to mess around with it, put it on disk, whatever the case may be. But if you're an attacker and you want this on the box, leave it out of disk. Put it all directly into memory. All right, so we covered that. I was a little bit behind in my slides, so there is other things I want to point out to a little bit on the attacking side. So Windows 10 is coming up. It's actually his password is actually this. I know. The one thing I want to mention is let me just make sure I have this in here. Oh, I don't have it in there. Oh boy, I thought I had this one in there. Crap. Let's see, new. Raw GitHub user content.com manifestation power split master exfiltration invoke. Thanks for the path thing, by the way. Invoke Mimikatz PS1. Please download. Yay! I was a little nervous about that. All right, so Microsoft has actually come a long way. Given, we give Microsoft crap all the time, but they've actually come a long way, and they have worked really hard with the security community, not against. And I have to give them credit for that. So, for a lot of people that don't know, with the Mimikatz, it's, as Will demonstrated earlier, it's meant to pull out the password in memory in plain text. Windows 10 went a step further, and they tried to block that, and they worked directly with the security community, trying to get this resolved, trying to help things get better and safer. And Lee even reached out to Matt and his team and trying to talk about different ways that they can make things better. So I've got to give Microsoft props. They're actively trying to make things better. So if you look at Windows 10, if you run it natively without any changes or whatever the case may be, Mimikatz actually doesn't work. It stops. So, give a huge props to Windows 10. I've got to give them credit for that. But there is actually a bypass for this, and it's the same one that worked in Windows 8, which is that you just change the registry keys to get that to work. But they're at least trying. They're doing their best. So granted of that case, out of the box without changing anything, this one stops. So it's cool. They're working really hard on that. So we've got to give them credit for some of the stuff that they do and some of the stuff that they're working on. So from the defensive side, I think it's awesome. As an attacker, that sucks because it just makes it that much more harder, although when you just have to flip a bit in a registry key, it's not so difficult. So they are working hard on trying to get that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the defensive tools. We talked, and I'm running a little short on time, so I want to make sure I have enough time for questions and answers. Did I hear someone like? Okay, good. All right, so there are some defensive tools. So PoshSec is something you guys are familiar with, something I've talked about it for a while. Kanza from Dave Holt is a great utility, a great set of tools that are trying to help people out and get better handle on a lot of the stuff that they're doing on their systems. And then Power Forensics by Jared Atkinson. I wanted Jared to actually show some of his tool, but in the speaker room just a few minutes ago, it kept on failing. So that's because Lee was helping him out. Lee Holmes from Microsoft was helping him out and broke his code. At least that's what Jared told me. So, so thanks again, Lee. So we're gonna look at a project that Matt Johnson and myself are working on. So a lot of you guys know I'm actually a blue teamer. So I actually do pen testing with VilePoint. I like being on that side of the team, and I like doing other things with them. But I'm a blue teamer at heart. I love keeping people safe. I like making sure that things are. And you know what? And I'll be honest with you. I haven't been doing pen testing for that long, but I've found pen testing to be so much easier. It is so much easier. You know, I got into an alarm control system, and the password was 1234. I mean, it wasn't hard. I didn't have to do anything. You know, I called the guy, and I'm like, are you standing next to your server room door? He's like, yeah. And I said, is it locked? He's like, yeah. And I put, doop. I'm like, is it now? He's like, shh. And they hung up the phone. Right? So it's like, so far, I haven't really, I mean, I'm sure the challenges exist, but so far I haven't been challenged. When it was defense, it was so much harder. I had to do so much more work. And, you know, if I fail on red team, it's just that, you know, either you're really secure or I suck as a pen tester, but no big deal. If I fail as a blue team, I could lose my job or the company could be out of business. So it's a lot harder. So Matt Johnson and I were very passionate about that. We like seeing ways that we can actually use PowerShell and do other things to do all that. And some of you guys know we talked about how PowerShell was created. And so we believe in that passion. We believe in what PowerShell stands for, and we believe that it can be better with community involvement. So I want to talk, this is a screenshot from Jared's tool when it actually worked before Lee touched it. Just kidding, Lee, sorry. All right, so I want to show you a couple things. Let's get PowerShell back open. Oh yeah, I run everything as administrator. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Anyone know what this does? It's the registry. How many people did I just blow your mind? Oh, wait. Okay, watch this. Now how many people did I just blow your freaking mind? Okay? Oops. Microsoft Windows. Current version. I know what I'm doing. I know how to computer, bro. Did you say QLS? Oh. No, it's yeah, hold on. I've got it. Jeez. I got all flustered. Yeah, it's get item, right? It's just get item. No, it's get item. There we go. All right, so get item. So basically what we can do is we can see all of the things that are going on with that, and I'm in the wrong directory, so run, get item. There we go. So now you can see all of the stuff that I have started up in the run menu of the registry, right? So one of the things that I talk to a lot of people about is being able to monitor this type of stuff, right? So, you know, especially on your critical assets and just checking for any type of persistent stuff, you know. There's many different places that you can hide something so that it'll actually start back up. But one of the lowest hanging fruit places that you can possibly do this is in the registry, right? It's simple, it's easy, you can put it there, and every time it boots up, it goes there. So one of the things I wanted to do was monitor this. I wanted to do this for two reasons. One, I wanted to make sure that if there was ever an attacker on my system and he tried persistence here, I'd be able to identify it and flag it. Two, I wanted to also check to make sure that if any software put something here that I wasn't aware of, like, you know, Citrix or whatever the case may be, I would know about that and be able to monitor that. So if I do this, it's path, and name is not a virus. Okay, so now if I do get item, you can see my not a virus in there, right? So let's just go ahead and look at the registry, which I have open. So there's no not a virus. F5, there's not a virus, okay? Super simple, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to go ahead and delete this right now. And I'm going to show you this tool that I have. So this is PowerShell Framework, and like I showed you earlier, this was me hooking into the management.automation.dll. Now this is completely open source and on my GitHub under PowerShell. So if you ever wanted to figure out how to do this, you have like, I think it's like 2,000 lines of code free to just mess around with. Okay? But I wrote this to actually make PowerShell easier for people to use. So if you have a team that don't really want to know PowerShell, but they know how to double click something, then they can actually do it. If they don't know how to double click something, they should not be on your team. All right, so I have this thing called Monitor Startup Programs. So when you double click it, it'll actually say, okay, show me a baseline file for what you want me to monitor. So I've got this file, okay, I hit run, and what it does is it goes out to the registry, looks for any changes, and then if there's a change, it'll actually show an alert, okay? One of the cool things I did about this tool is I set it up to where you can actually offload it to a syslog. So I've got Kiwi syslog running over here, and you can kind of see it's pulling in stuff from PowerShell framework. So if I go ahead and go back to my PowerShell, wherever it may be, I do this again. Okay, so now I have my not a virus. Well, now I'm going to come over here, and I've got this set up as a scheduled task, so I can run, you know, however frequently I want. But let's say I just go ahead and go now. What do you see? Boom. And it's right there in the syslog. And that's some of the things that you can do with PowerShell. And it's super simple, super easy, and you want to do this on your critical asset stuff. You know, a lot of this persistent stuff, you can do this with file monitoring, you can do this with configuration changes. A lot of people are using these gold images now, right? So a lot of you have heard about, you know, creating this gold image and spinning up the VM and trying to get everything to work off of that. But how do you know that the gold image hasn't changed? Or when you're monitoring a system, you know, you've got a web application and all of a sudden someone uploads a file. Well, why aren't you monitoring those files to make sure that they're actually supposed to be there? Well, there's a lot of different tools, but, you know, there's also PowerShell, which is super easy to use, super straight to get up and running. So, you know, that's part of the reason we created this. At my last org, we didn't have a never-ending budget, you know? So I wrote something that makes my life easier, integrates with syslog, which we're already using, should be, and that way, whenever the registry changed, whenever the files were done, I was able to see what was going on with that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So a bit ago, Lee Holm, sorry Lee, I love you, buddy. Lee wrote this great thing called PowerShell Loves the Blue Team. And we love them too, sometimes. So they worked really hard on trying to set up these events and event logging and everything else like that. And it was a really cool technique. And what was cool about Lee is he actually reached out to the security team before he wrote this. And I was at Microsoft Ignite, and Matt Johnson and I were there, and we're roaming around, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm talking with some of their subject matter experts and showing them how to actually break stuff and whatever the case may be. I even got to show Jeffrey Snover, the creator of PowerShell, a bug in his code. It was so cool. I was like totally fanboying, like a little child, like I normally am. And I was so cool to be able to show that bug to him. But I actually got a call, like, to talk with Lee Holm. I actually on the phone. It was really cool. And I'm like, Matt, guess who I'm on the phone with? He's like, you suck. So we're sitting there doing this, and he reached out, and he's like, hey, see what you can do with this. And so I went back to the hotel room, and by that night, I had a partial bypass. By the next day, I had a full bypass. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that. So in the event logs, if I can find them, here we go. All right, so underneath these logs, you have this PowerShell operational, okay? So the whole idea here is you can see any type of things that might be going on with a 4104. So I have this filtered to just 4104. So make sure you guys write that down. That's an interesting event log. So this is going to be basically what it's trying to do is capture anything that looks out of the ordinary, right? So one of the things that Matt and he's doing with PowerSploit is he hooks into the reflection file. So let me show you that. So this is one of those things where if you you want to hook into, you know, interrupt services Marshall, you're basically pulling out the secure string into plain text. Okay, that's what this code is doing. So if I were to actually take this code and run it, set location. Okay, boom. What you're going to see is a new 4104 event. It's going to show you the actual code of what's being used. Okay? So that was cool and awesome, but I found out that if you don't use the actual interrupt services and then just put the two pieces together with an L, it doesn't flag it. So you can basically type interrupt service, S Marshall, join them together, and then cast that to the type. So then basically if I go like this now, I still get password, and no event log. Lee did tell me that this was fixed in the latest version. Okay, so those are the types of things. So they're trying really hard, but again, there's always going to be some way around that. But I've got to give them huge credit for the amount of effort that they're trying to put into there. Okay, so couple of things I want to talk about is, different resources that are available, some things that are going on. We have PowerSploit, we have Veil PowerView, we have PowerSec Mod, PowerSec Kanza, Invoke IR, but there is one last thing I want to just demonstrate. So, there's a lot of times that, people talk about, demo fails and whatever the case may be. I'm going to go. Thanks, Sorbo. Okay, cool. Modules. Import. No, I'm not running Mimikatz on this box. All right. The moment that I close this, I'm about the blue screen. Okay. So this is one of those things where you can basically set something that if for those that don't know, anything that's a critical process, if it stops, Windows just shuts down. It stops. It's cold. It's hard. It's unforgiving. So this is a great way to mess around with someone and to basically hee hee giggle giggle whatever snort. But there's also another one that I wrote here, and it's called the Kraken. And basically it's called Unlock the Kraken. And so what this does is it'll actually enumerate all of your networking devices, and when you run it, it'll actually disable them. It won't turn them off, like it won't just remove the IP, it'll actually disable them. So you can't even remotely enable them. You have to physically walk around, and you can point this at every system on your network and it'll happily do it for you. So if you ever wanted to rage quit, think... So you just don't say anything about me. All right. So before I do anything and I totally BSOD my box, any questions so far? I've got drink tickets. Yeah.
The automation DLL, is that only used for PowerShell, or is that used by other processes as well?
So I don't have the answer to that question, and that might be a good question to follow up with Lee at the end there. But I know for a fact that the automation, all of the libraries, if you use like .peek or ILSpy on that and you decompile the automation.dll, it shows that there's a lot in there and it hooks into a lot of functions. Jeffrey Snover told me that when PowerShell was first created, they didn't actually create a lot of the modules until they got buy-in from the executives, and they said every team from forensics to anti-forensics to security to what, you have to write 5 modules for PowerShell. And then it just grew exponentially. So I don't have a full answer to your question, but I'm sure that there's a lot more in there. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really that's automation.dll is using, but I'll tell you that going forward, there's a lot of PowerShell that's doing a lot of your management now. So especially when you get to Nano Server, you can't manage Nano Server without PowerShell. So be careful about that. So if you're looking for a compensating control, that may not be the best one. You may want to work on the detection on the 4104s than trying to remove that file. Yeah, in the blue shirt? Yeah. So your question was with what? Yep. Yeah, so the question was with the basically they're de-encoding the messages from PowerShell, so how's that going to work from the defensive side, because the 4104s are big. That was my first complaint to Lee, is that the signal to noise ratio is too high. I should say the noise to signal ratio is too high. It's too much for anyone to consume. It's a good place to start. I will tell you that the Microsoft Threat Analytics team, they are on the money. If you've not looked at the advanced threat analytics, you need to look at that because they're specifically looking at that baselining and they're looking at creating that use case so that way you don't have to look at the developer's machine who's popping PowerShell like, aspirin, but if all of a sudden Wendy in HR or, Bob in accounting, they're popping PowerShell, well, then that's where the threat analytics will come into play. All the way in the back? Matt? Yes, you can. Yeah, one more. Have I ever run into issues with code execution policy? So yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the code execution policy, for those that don't know, is basically you can set it to unsigned, remote signed, all, which you should never do, or signed only. But yeah, there's definitely there. But I have found that even with it set there are some commands that'll go through without any problem whatsoever. So and that's the rub, right? Is that defense. You guys got to stop thinking about defense as stopping the attacker from getting in. I mean, that's definitely part of it, but that's not the goal. The goal is to detect when they're in. Okay, that's the key. You've got to be able to look and see what's there. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So you can actually, and that's the cool thing about this is that you can actually do a whole bunch of stuff with this. So you can actually hook into your own stuff and write your own messages. Yep, all the way back. Right. So yeah, absolutely. For those teams that actually don't need to use a lot of PowerShell, I would definitely lock it down and make sure that it can't run from other people. I mean, that's definitely a low-hanging fruit thing that you can take care of, but it's not an end-all solution. So if an attacker wants to get on your system, that's going to be what. But if you have it locked down, let's say you do have PowerShell.exe, as an attacker, as you saw even with Will's demo, he didn't hook into some rare process. He hooked into PowerShell.exe. If you have alerting from Will in accounting that pulls up PowerShell.exe, he may be able to do something different, but you're already going to know about it if you're actually maintaining and watching your logs, which we all do, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he is actually the one doing the logs. All right. Any other questions? Yes. You would have then you're writing to disk. So the whole idea about what you're trying to do is you're using the existing DLL on the disk to inject into memory. So yeah. So you can do that for sure. Yeah. Yep. He was using the fixed version. Yep. Yeah, and that's why I gave huge props to him. He reached out to us so that way we could break it before he published it. So, I mean, give Lee a hand. I mean, seriously, come in. That's really cool, right? I mean, that speaks volumes for what they're trying to do, right? They're not just going to say, hey, this is the silver bullet. No, they're like, dude, you might be able to break this, but if you do, tell us. And we did. And that was so cool. I mean, this was back in April or May, and that's when I was able to do it, So that's really cool. But yeah, and if you do script block logging as he described yesterday, my bypass actually fails. So, but most of you guys don't have this yet, so this bypass still works. Okay? Yep. Yeah, so yeah, for sure. The execution policies will pull from that because you're hooking into the PowerShell thing, and that's where all of that stuff lives. Yep, absolutely. (2010) or 2012. Yep, which most of you guys are running, unless you're still on 2000, which I know some of you are. Yeah. Yeah, so you guys ready to see that? No, I'm going to do it. Ready? Hey! And that's my talk. Thank you very much. I've got